Hello, my name's Katie Sando and welcome to the Marketing Forum podcast, where we learn about the professional world of some of my favourite marketers, communicators, creatives and business leaders. In this episode, I am so pleased to be joined by Judi Blakeburn, brand director for Watergate Bay Hotel and Another Place Hotels. Judi was, in fact, the first ever interviewee at a Marketing Forum event back in 2018. 'Twas September. It was a beautiful day and we were at the Watergate Bay Hotel. And we had some delicious food and drink and a live interview with Judi, and so many benefited from her knowledge and insight. Then people still mention to me about it even today. So from the challenging circumstances for the hospitality sector over the last year, how her approach to marketing has evolved and how we can move as marketers into leadership positions, we have a wide-ranging conversation, and I find any conversation with Judi incredibly inspiring. And I do not use that term lightly. So enjoy this episode and check back soon for more, please, from the Marketing Forum podcast. Hi, Judi. Thank you so much for joining us on the Marketing Forum podcast. This is your second Marketing Forum experience, and you are still to this day, you remain one of the most popular.
Thank you. Well, I'm really privileged to be here again. So
no,
thanks,
we
Katie.
love to hear your thoughts. So it's been you can't really overstate how tough it's been, in particular, I think, for hospitality, travel, tourism sector. And so, we've been having a lot of conversations about it's pretty much impossible to plan anyway. So, whether or not you're an absolutely fantastic planner, you would never have been able to plan for what happened with the global pandemic and then the subsequent lockdowns. So I'm really interested in your role as a lead of marketing and brand at Watergate Bay and Another Place Hotels, how you guys have managed that as a business.
So, yes, you're right. I mean, 2 weeks before the first lockdown last March, we bought our second Another Place hotel.
I remember.
So you can see how little we were thinking about the fact that 2020 was going to be the way it was. I mean, there was certainly rumblings. There was certain conversations. But nothing stopped us in our tracks, and that was 2 weeks before the lockdown. So you're absolutely right. As we came into March, that notion of planning for what had happened, of course we hadn't.
No.
And our first actions was to protect both our teams and our business, which meant putting absolutely everyone we could onto furlough, making sure our costs had been reduced as far as they could be. But then actually planning became a fundamental of what we did. So the senior team, so the director team led by Ben Harper, who's our MD, set about scenario planning. So various plans, that initial plan, how do we protect the businesses? How do we make best use of everything the government had to offer? That was incredibly important. How do we protect the business in all kinds of ways? Just in terms of physically, how do you make sure it's ready to reopen when the time comes? So we went from a point of, oh my goodness, what are we going to do, actually into a continuous planning cycle, on the understanding that the plans we were making were going to have to change. So our FD, who was relatively new to the business, she was creating forecasts and throwing them away as fast as she was making them. But it was incredibly important that we were doing that. So I think meticulous planning is essential, but that you have to have flexibility in those plans. You have to be able to iterate those plans. You have to innovate. You have to pivot, and then you have to throw it all away and start again. And have that approach continuously. And that, I think that went for us for everything from financial planning, from business planning to marketing and strategizing all that. So as we got closer to the thought of reopening, then the planning for COVID secure. Oh my goodness, the amount that hospitality had to do, the hoops we had to jump through, the reimagining we had to do of our businesses, for all of us, to come up with something that was acceptable to our guests and financially achievable, so that we still remained profitable. That piece of work was quite unbelievable. And that requires and will require iteration when we open again this spring. So I think that hospitality has shown itself to be incredibly creative and incredibly flexible, given everything that was thrown at it, and how little, so this is very personal, how little thought was given to us as an industry, really.
I mean, definitely when it comes to, I think hospitality have just been amazing. Like the stuff they've put in place. I saw even, we talked about New Year's earlier, and just talking about the fact that the position that businesses were put in was absolutely impossible if you work in restaurant or hospitality. And I saw that, Paul Ainsworth got his team, and they still put out all the food and drink into packs for people to take home.
Yes.
And just the ability to on a what do they call it, on a sixpence?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, that's why I feel like it's been so unfair for hospitality, because they have been the most secure to protect their businesses.
I think New Year's Eve was the absolute microcosm of the difficulty for the industry, to be prepared for that, and then to let go of that. The costs involved in that for everyone who was going to be open on that day were huge. Paul has done amazing things all the way through 2020. I mean, we were able to give what we had, all the fresh food to a food bank. So we've all looked for ways of making the best from what happened. But that is a perfect example of how difficult it's been.
From a marketing perspective, so from a business planning perspective, with everything that was going on, like you say, it's about my friend. So I don't know if you've noticed, but we started a business leaders podcast, and Andrew is the finance director. And he said that he was in the same boat, where he was being asked to write, to do forecasting. And he was just sort of thinking like, okay, but it's a mythical creature. But from a marketing perspective, particularly, so objective setting, how have you managed to do that? So have you, like, lead times in terms of what you're able to achieve must have shortened enormously?
Yes. So during the extended lockdown, we put the whole of our marketing team on furlough, but there was a week before they all went, and we worked furiously to imagine what specifically content we might need. How will we, as a business, given that everything that we stand for is you coming to stay with us, how are we going to stay in touch and relevant? And who are we going to be talking to? And so from that base of content that my team created, it was then just me, and it was incredibly good for me. Actually, it was good to get back to being responsible for every word that we put out, and understanding again at that granular level what we should and shouldn't be doing. And because it was only me, then planning for that became very important, but also leaving huge amounts of flexibility, because the most amazing things happened during lockdown, and we connected with all kinds of people from our communities, and got involved with things that I couldn't imagine. But we understood about armchair travel very quickly. We understood that we should be talking to our communities, people who knew us. They were the people who hopefully would be interested to hear from us. And we thought very seriously about what we should be talking about, when we should be talking about it, where we should be talking about it, and finding the right words given all the things that were going on, and making sure that we weren't seen to be encouraging travel when we weren't. We just wanted to be ready for when the time was right, but to entertain and perhaps inform during that closure. And then that moment of, right, we're going to be open, actually we were in a good place because we opened into the summer and we were full. So again, really, it was continuing to talk to those audiences who know us, our communities who know us, given that we also understood that the people who were most likely to come and stay were people who knew us and trusted us. And that was so. Your question really about planning, yes, we planned. We were very fortunate. We were in a beautiful location. We had lots of interesting stories to tell, and we planned those, and we thought about the platforms we were putting them on. We were able to create longer format content because people had more time to read. And then actually that has really changed our approach from once we opened again. So we learned a lot, I think, from everything that we did during lockdown and the planning. Actually, really interestingly, Katie, I know we began by planning is difficult, but we did more planning. We did, because there was less of us.
Right.
We did far more planning and were far more considered. So we created less and worked harder on our distribution. And of course, that's exactly right. That balance between creating wonderful content and distributing wonderful content has to be a balance. And I think we learned to do the distribution better and to spend more time engaging with our communities.
It's planning is so difficult when you're in a normal pace of, marketing happens at pace and you're trying to do it all, aren't you? And so it's very difficult to justify not doing any marketing for 6 weeks while you create the perfect plan. So in terms of going forwards then this year, so content and channel, so did you talked about then focusing more on your distribution. So have you narrowed down your channels?
I think we've become more purposeful about our channels. Obviously, our communities and our guests, the people who want to engage with us, determine where we should be. And it's just making sure we are where they are and being present and speaking to them where they want us to be. We've all said this, but email is so not dead.
I know.
And particularly for our demographic, it is still the most important communications channel we have. But creating content for that and putting out newsletters that are certainly not a load of sales messages, but are relevant to our community who's receiving them, has become more and more important. So our blog and our writers and our content producers have become more important. We plan for that well ahead. And then thinking about that, if we're creating all this wonderful content, thinking about how it's then going to be used and repurposed and where it should go. Social media, of course, is incredibly important to us all, but we're an Instagram first business. We're also, of course, on Facebook. We repurposed to Twitter, but it's not part of our world particularly. And we have for 2021 a very considered approach to Instagram, because Instagram has just become a whole collection of channels in its own right. So, we used to be somebody who just focused on the grid and did a bit of stories. And now we are a company who's going to be creating a strategy and plan that will see us use grid, stories, highlights, guides, reels, and IGTV. So really, there's no time for any more. But we see those as incredibly valuable to us. The guides particularly, we've just put our toe in the water of guides, and it's very exciting. And I'm sure Instagram will be bringing more to guides, more functionality to guides shortly. Of course, everyone talks to us about TikTok, but our demographic is 35 plus.
Yeah.
I think, though, that it would be remiss not to understand it better as a format, and Reels will give us that opportunity to understand the format better. And if we work to produce content for Reels, that means we have content for TikTok, and I think that we'll engage with influencers on TikTok in the first instance to see whether or not them producing content about us might have relevance to audiences on TikTok. So that I think is my only small scale test for 2021. Does TikTok have a part to play within our channels to market? So really, yes, you're right. We've narrowed down. Our content creation is vital. Our blog is going to go through a complete redesign and refocus. We're going to think about that very seriously this year, because that's the home of most of our content. We are going to continue with the way we're going to continue our strategy around newsletters, but we'll certainly be doing things that other industries and other people in our industry have been doing for years, but we'll be doing far more personalization, and we will be also using dynamic content more. That's another thread of our strategy for 2021, because email is so powerful.
Oh, that's so exciting. You've got they're like the most fun things, aren't they? Those parts of content I just absolutely love. Do you mind me asking how you're going to deliver that? Are you going to do most of that in-house? Are you going to outsource? I know you already outsource some of your creative support.
Yeah. So we have a small exceptional in-house team. So we have a marketing manager. We have she has an assistant. We have a designer. We have a graphic designer in-house. And then myself and somebody else, another further marketing communications manager on property in the Lake District. And that's a small team. And then we have third-party agencies that we work with. And for the first time, and again, I'm sorry, it's the first time I've ever done this, but we had an all-agency meeting this autumn to set our priorities for 2021, but so everyone was part of that planning process. So our PR agency, we work with Wildcard, and we have done for many years. We have a photographer who works with us on a monthly basis. So we have a photographer on a retainer because it's so important to be capturing good quality images, and we hope to be doing that with someone who will create film for us, video for us. And then we work with Stranger Collective, who are our writers.
So they will be helping to support create quite a lot of that content for the newsletters.
Yeah, they will do the long writing, the long format writing that we're then able to use in different ways. So we'll repurpose the content, but the long format is written for us by the Stranger Collective. But they are just part of the planning process in terms of planning the content we want to create this year, and we begin with our brand experience, our brand pillars, and then our business imperatives and in business needs, and then build up this big calendar of content for the coming year.
Oh, I love a content planning meeting.
Yes, yeah, it was brilliant, and the insights brought by each team that to bring to bear on that was just fantastic, and it was both brainstorm and meticulous planning, all in the same at the same time, really.
Yeah, it's I mean, I totally agree with you. I just I was reading before Christmas. There was an article in the Financial Times talking about the fact that journalists, it's becoming obviously journalism, a lot of them are losing their work. Writers, it's difficult for them to make cash, and Substack is like it's like a newsletter platform, right? You can create subscriptions, and they're basically talking about the fact that the newsletter is coming back and stronger than ever. Yes, because people are just going to be starting. It's another way of the old school blogs, isn't it? It's like another way of telling your stories, communicating your thoughts.
Absolutely. My poor team, I sign up for a ridiculous number of newsletters
and forward them on.
and forward them all on. And the difference between long format and short format within the email itself, and whether you drive people to your blogs, and whether or not your blogs should all have the read time, clearly identified on them. Yeah, no, absolutely. That was, but also you just introduced me to something new. So what do you say? Substack.
I am getting more and more interested in newsletters where they're not expecting me to go anywhere else, that I can, I have to go expand content. But I like the fact that it's in itself, it's like a little microcosm of.
Yeah, I think that's, and I think I won't come up with the right word, but if you think about all the phenomenal magazines over the last 5-10 years, the whole change in print magazines and the caliber of those magazines, we're now seeing people like Ernest, who are producing most incredible content for their magazines. But because of that, we also all expect to consume high caliber content at all times,
everywhere.
Yeah.
It's great though, because I think that bar should be raised, and it's a combination, isn't it, of like quality but authenticity. And
yes.
So I suppose, that kind of leads on to my next question for you, which is how your approach has changed to marketing at Watergate Bay over the years, or if it has, I guess.
So do we all think, I made some notes about this. So do we think that marketing has fundamentally changed? Are we all doing a fundamentally different job, or are we doing the same job on fundamentally different platforms? What's our job? Our job has always been to communicate with people who may be interested in hearing from us about what it is that we do and the experiences we may be able to create for them. And that I think has been my job since the day I started in marketing. The way I do that job has changed fundamentally. And I wrote a little note to myself about the fact that I arrived in, I can't even find it now. I arrived in Cornwall in 2000 and went to work for Rick Stein. But I came across to Watergate Bay at the end of 2003. And from that moment onwards, and I would say it is from that moment onwards, we moved from being a brand that advertised to a brand that communicated. And yes, the way we communicate, the platforms we communicate on, and when we talk about communicate, that being a two-way flow, a proper conversation, that is the thing that has changed, I suppose, most fundamentally. That move away from shouting at people to talking to people, but that was always the best way of telling your story, and understanding your potential, your guests and your potential guests, and having the right kind of conversations with them in the locations that they are. So so yes, it's changed a lot. We have to handle far more channels. We have to communicate with people in a far more diverse way. And that's a challenge for us all. How do we have all those different conversations? But I think there is certainly software and platforms coming along to help us manage that. The whole dashboarding of messaging platforms into one place will be a real benefit to us.
The brand thing is so interesting around the communication. It's stupid for me to try and recount this, because I know I can't remember the statistic, but it was something like, there was an article and it was talking about that if a company had invested in brand like a decade ago versus investing in advertising, its value was crazy.
Yes.
Did you see that?
I saw that. Yes, no,
and
absolutely.
It's so interesting because still I think now in marketing, when you do come across businesses that don't really get the value of marketing and don't really get the value of brand, and they do think it's about sales and just like you say, advertising rather than communicating, so you almost feel like putting stuff like that in their face. You just say, come on, you really need to build these relationships, or it's a longer term strategy.
Yeah.
But it's got the payoff.
It has, and I knew a couple of years ago, we did a team survey, and a member of the team wrote, she was asked for any other kind of feedback, and she wrote, "What's brand anyway?"
Oh no.
And well, so huge failing on my part, but to readdress that and make sure that everyone understands that every single thing we do say is our brand, and that she was as fundamental to our brand as anything else, any words written or films created or anything else, that she was fundamentally delivering our brand every day. Really, 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 really important. Everybody understands the power of your brand.
Yeah. I always say, like my little, I suppose, bugbear is around finance. The way we invoice and the way you chase and pay is part of it, particularly places like where we are, because, in Cornwall, it's a small world, isn't it? And
absolutely.
But anyway,
I would say also recruitment, particularly.
Oh, yeah.
Recruitment is a marketing world. It's a marketing job, and making sure that the brand comes through when you're looking to hire people and have your team's understanding at the outset of their journey with you it is fundamental too.
So I wanted to talk to you about leadership quite a lot, because I think marketing leadership is something that we share a view on, I think.
Yes.
So shall we start by then sharing that view? So talk to me about leadership, particularly from a marketing perspective, in your eyes.
But I think you know what I think on this one. Marketers have an absolute role at a leadership level. Marketers should all imagine their careers have no ceiling. They are a fundamental discipline within a successful business, which means that their place at board level should be, a goal. That's where we should always be imagining we're headed. But that we have a responsibility as marketers to ensure that other disciplines see us at least as credible and can't think of quite the right word, but
commercial.
Commercial, as well trained, as valuable and as valid in those conversations as the accountants, the lawyers, the HR directors. That we tend to be the department that cares most for the brand. And therefore we should all imagine ourselves as making our way up to be a fundamental part of leading businesses. And I've said to you before that we can, I think it's during my career, my experience of how other disciplines may look at me, or look at marketing as something lesser, to step down from other disciplines, has been a real bugbear for me, and has meant that I've taken quite a traditional view of how to ensure my standing, do a great job. I mean, there's no substitute for that.
No.
Do a great job. But make sure you've got the right qualifications. Make sure that you're part of an industry body. Make sure you're doing CPD every year and it's credible and you're taking responsibility for it. And if you do imagine that you want to get to board level, then think about your whole business understanding, your whole business perspective. Consider doing an MBA. I get that I'm talking from a very traditional, go out and get your qualifications, get the letters after your name, etc. But I think given the other disciplines and how that's true for them, I think that's probably for me, I see that as a good route. One of the things that I talk to mentors, being the great old age, I talk to marketers from a mentoring perspective occasionally, and one of the things I'm say quite regularly is that this all takes time, and that a marketer has to invest time and effort in their own careers. You can't expect your employer is going to necessarily have your 2, 5, and 10-year plan in mind, and that therefore you have to be working on that. You have to be working on that every day of your life, and you should be aligning your objectives with the business objectives. These two things should run hand in hand and benefit each other. But so I suppose I'd say, don't expect your employer to be leading on any of this for you necessarily, but take on all offers of training and come with suggestions of development at appraisal time or any other time that make sure those suggestions are aligned with the business goals at the time. So yes, there's my my views.
It is so odd, isn't it, that I suppose that we're still fighting that battle a little bit. But in businesses these days, when you've got such massive examples of powerhouse businesses that have dominated, Nike, Apple, they are marketing companies almost by definition. Yeah. And so then to still be sat there thinking like, you haven't got a marketing person on your board. It's curious that conversation still happening. But, I completely agree with you that one of the ways to instill that sense of credibility is...
That was the word I was reaching for,
is that, that learned, the discipline that comes with knowledge as opposed to just... I don't know, experience.
Well, experience, but I suppose I think I'm not necessarily as disciplined about this as I should be. But all the experiences we're having, the experience we're having now, writing that down, making sure that you learn from everything that you get involved. You get involved in, and you have a continuous professional development log, even just for yourself. It is incredibly valuable.
The more I read just generally of other people and in business, you cannot fail to connect business success on a professional level with learning. There is you don't hear of barely anybody that is successful that is completely disinterested in their professional development and learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's very few marketers I meet who aren't actually really energized by everything that's going on. And there is so much. There's such fantastic industry leading examples for us all to look at on every day of the week. I say to my team, and I've never had an original thought. I really
you don't
haven't.
exist. There's no such thing.
You just soak up these fantastic examples that we see on a daily basis, and then reimagine them for our own business situations as they arise. One of the things I did want to say, or I'm only repeating, but it's an experience that I've had, is that I think that marketers have a difficult time if they haven't decided to have a specialism, a complete specialism. They're going to work in the SME environment rather than big business and become a data analyst or whatever it is they're going to focus on. Then they have this huge challenge. They have to be. We used to talk about unicorns. They have to have this base level and then this one specialism, and now they have to have Pi, so the kind of Archimedes type, not the apple and blackberry kind. They need to have two disciplines, and one needs to be creative, and one needs to be objective and data driven. And And I think a huge amount is expected of us.
Yeah.
It's the level of creativity, you know. Do you not take a really great picture? Can you not just whip up an authentic video for me, please? And by the way, can you analyze all the data and tell me exactly what it's telling us about our guests? And it's very exciting. Lots and lots of avenues that you could specialize in, but I think in the SME world, that then we're extraordinary people with a real breadth of knowledge.
I love it when you say that, because I've always struggled with this concept of corporate marketers coming out of corporate and jumping into the SME consultancy world. And you just think, guys, you have no idea what we've been dealing with over here.
Yes.
Yes. I love the idea of that software that you're talking about. However, the entire budget for the year is 25 grand. And I just
exactly when I said to you, this year has to be the year of personalization and dynamic content in our emails, and everyone will just shrug and go, well, that's been around forever, Judi. Why aren't you doing that? But actually, the investment in the software, the ensuring that you have, when you say to people in hospitality, do you have a single guest view? It's taken us years to get away from siloed situations where you had a property management system and you had a table reservation system and you had and your guest would exist in any number of places, but being able to pull it all together and get insight from that data, and then be able to present back to those individuals relevant content, that's for small businesses, that's a mountain to climb. We're very fortunate. We made a move to a resort software, away from just something that was a standalone PMS to a single system. So we do, and we're still not yet really mining that data for all it's worth. But we will. Mm.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Is that there's one of the other things I think in SMEs is that often marketing will be asked to solve impossible problems through marketing. And actually, that's where it's a question of saying this is an operational problem or this is a strategic problem.
Yes.
And I think for me, like the leadership area is that if you don't have that broader business knowledge, then it's hard for you to push back around those demands and say, this is a customer service issue rather than the fact that, but so I guess a question for you is, around a board, what do you think has served you best in leadership? So I know you talked about how to be taken seriously, I guess, in a leadership role. Which particular area do you think is it more like finance, general business understanding?
Where I am, and I have an advantage because I came from hospitality into marketing. So I came out of university and was actually a vegetarian chef back in the 80s. So that's where my career has begun. I've been in hospitality all my life and made the move about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, into the marketing side. So I have a good understanding of operations. I've always been in hospitality marketing, so I'm kind of soaked in that. So that's useful to me. I have an insight from an operator's perspective. That's really important, because you can come up with all wonderful ideas and the operators say, well, that's just not possible. My financial understanding was something I had to work very hard on. I have to work hard on it now. I'm numerate enough, but I'll make sure that I've read management accounts several times before I'm going to sit and talk to other board members, because it's not my natural environment. I think for me, finance, really understanding everything that goes into making a sustainable business. Sustainability is all about making sure that we're here for the long term on every level, and just understanding how money passes through the business, and that's been my challenge, and something therefore I've had to focus on.
I don't want to generalize, but I'm going to. I feel like it's common for marketers, because if you've got to not have necessarily that finance knowledge, because if you've gone through the development of, creative content, written, often you're not necessarily, I would say that my area that I most have to work on is the same as yours. Like I don't like look at a bunch of numbers and go ka-ching. I know what those are.
I'm amazed when I sit at a board and 5 minutes of looking at a set of numbers, the insight drawn from data, that kind of data, is just there at some of my peers' fingertips, and and that's it's good. You need to understand what you're not as good at, and give it the time it deserves.
It's the equivalent, isn't it, of us like casting our eye through some copy and like spotting a typo.
Yeah. For me, I can look at a piece of copy and say that absolutely resonates with our brand, or it doesn't, in seconds. But yes,
I can look at a Marks and Spencer's ad and say they're missing a fork.
Yes, yeah.
So, question for you, probably final-ish question, is around marketers in general. Like, what do you think in general we should be cultivating now? So I know you talked about like the specialism. You talk about creativity, and then the data side. Is there a more general thing we could look to cultivate, do you think? Or do you think, I mean, it's very hard, isn't it, to sort of...
I think when you talked about brands, marketers becoming the brand champion within their business, I think that's really important. All kinds of people within the organization in different departments will be brand champions, but I think marketers have to be brand champions. They have to be right under the skin of the brand that they're representing. Data, go and see what's possible, see what other, step outside of your of hospitality. If you're in hospitality, go look elsewhere, go see what's happening in retail, go see it, make sure your experience is broad, and that you bring back things from other sectors. I think that's really, we have lots to learn from other sectors. But insight from data, I think is something. I think that we're all naturally drawn to marketing because we're creative. Me not so much, but in general, the marketers I meet, they're very creative people. They have real ability to imagine stuff. It's a fantastic ability. But then being able to, that whole, we talked about content and distribution. It's that distribution. It's using data for insight to ensure the content you're creating is really being squeezed for every ounce it can give you. And the way to do that really is through analysis of how successful something's been, and setting, I'm sure we all do it, goal setting, return on investment, all of that.
It's the insight stuff. I don't know if you managed to catch up with the webinar that we did with Lucy from the Financial Times, the head of insights, but she just blew my mind.
Okay, I'll go back.
She utterly blew my mind. The insights that they, obviously, massive business. They have all the software, but the way that they've used data and insights to then drive not just sort of like marketing innovation, but business investment. Putting it in the right places, and it massively underpins how valuable that is.
Yes. Yeah.
A question, I suppose, for you that's a little bit slightly not off piece, but around. So as you grow in marketing and you end up doing more maybe strategic work at a board level or a senior level, how important do you think it is to try and stay in touch with your you talk about things like analytics and obviously you maybe like mining some of that data. Do you do much of that yourself? Or do you try and
Absolutely. I have I don't know, I'm quite dogged as a person. I want to go to the nth degree of understanding. I have to understand. I tend not to take things at face value. So I'm always picking away at stuff, I think, to be sure I understand, because I can't represent it to the board. I have to be sure myself. So yes, I have Google Analytics open on my laptop at all times. I'm in and out of our property management system, every day, just getting insight into how the booking pattern is shaping up. For me, what does Google Analytics tell me most? It tells me just how much we're putting in at the top of the funnel, and how the success of, we've got a big conversion rate optimization piece coming this year, because it's pointless. We do very well. You feed the top of the funnel. What's going in? Is it good quality?
Yeah.
Is it going to convert? What are the barriers to conversion? All of that. So, sorry, going back. Yes, I want to stay in touch with everything that's going on as much as possible. Makes me a bit of a workaholic.
But I know you've said before, and I think I'm in the same boat, is your passion is your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I love my job.
Yeah.
I absolutely love my job. I love marketing. I love everything that's coming along to innovate for us. I'm always messing around on different platforms. That's a discipline. That's actually a discipline for 2021, is trying to stay focused. It's good discipline for me. It's great. There's loads and loads of innovation out there. Good to be looking, good to be casting around, important to understand what's going on, but also that can eat up loads of time, and you've probably made good choices anyway. I love change. I throw things up in the air and just see what comes back down again. But there is a balance. You have to be open to change, and you have to be looking all the time, but you also have to be focused and make good choices.
And the conversion stuff that you're looking at, so are you using tools for that, or are you actually doing like a bit of a campaign?
No, so for us, this is very the conversion rate optimization project we're running is all around our booking engine. So we're very clear that actually this is structural on our website, that we need to make some changes to the booking engine. The way people flow through that particular funnel could be better, and that's technical and really important, and something we think we can make a significant difference to our conversion online through some structural changes. And we're working with experts on that, so doing a lot of work around that.
Conversion is so. I've written a couple of like overarching strategies for the year for a couple of clients, and conversion features in all of them, because
absolutely. I mean, it's at the end of the day, making sure we're talking to the right people and inspiring them in the right way at the right time to come into our funnel and make a purchase is, in the end of the day, is our job. And if then there are technical barriers that are hindering that, there's such great examples of booking engines out there, and it's just we have a great booking engine, but it needs some additional work.
You see when it's done wrong as well, though, don't you? When it's kind of like you're over prompted and you think, no, I'm not booking.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise with us. I feel like I have more questions still, and I'll probably bother you again in the future.
Thank you. It's always really lovely to have this kind of conversation. It's such a joy to be able to talk about what it is that we do. So yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity.
You are absolutely most welcome.
See you soon.
And you. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Judi Blakeburn from the Watergate Bay Hotel and Another Place Hotels, and I really hope you will agree with me that she is an absolute inspiration to any of our small business marketers, creators and communicators. In the next episode of the Marketing Forum podcast, I am joined by the wonderful Gordon Seabright. Gordon was chief exec of the Eden Project until fairly recently. And he's now leading a new charity in London called the Creative Land Trust. We have conversation about brand. We talk about business leadership. We just have a really wide-ranging conversation about business and marketing. So keep an eye out for that episode. And please, in the meantime, do like, subscribe and share.